Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Top 5. This week we're talking about the best walk-off endings of all time. What I mean by that is at the end of the movie, instead of riding off into the sunset, our lead character just walks off into the sunset. So this week's list is really fun. I think you guys are really going to like the movies I've chosen. So let's go ahead and get right into our top 5 films. Coming in at number 5 this week is 1956's Western classic, The Searchers. It stars John Wayne, it's the Duke's first appearance on our list, and was directed by John Ford. AFI ranks this the best Western of all time, and John Wayne liked the character Ethan Edwards so much that he named his son after him. At number 4 this week is the very funny 2004 film A Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, directed by Wes Anderson. The cast includes Bill Murray, Angelica Houston, Cate Blanchett, Owen Wilson, Willem Dafoe, and Jeff Goldblum. In 2004, this was Wes Anderson's largest movie to date, with a total budget of $50 million. This end sequence, set to David Bowie's Queen Bitch, pays direct homage to our movie at number 2 this week. At number 3 this week, we have the 1954 classic and a particular favorite of my little sister Hannah, On the Waterfront, directed by Elia Kazan, starring Marlon Brando and Karl Malden. Originally, Frank Sinatra had this role and was really excited about it, but eventually they gave it to Marlon Brando because he had more draw at the box office. This movie won 8 Academy Awards, including Best Actor, Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Supporting Actress. This is the movie that gave us I Could Have Been a Contender, and it was one of the best movies of all time and has one of the best endings of all time. That's why this week it comes in at our number 3 slot. So here we are at our top 2 films of the week, and I'm happy to say that they're not just the best walk-off films of all time, but in general, they're just 2 of my favorite movies ever. These 2 films couldn't be more different. One is irreverent, over-the-top, crazy funny, and the other is a film classic. At number 2 this week is the 1984 cult hit The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. So this movie is directed by W.D. Richter, and it has one of the most insane before-they-were-known casts of all time. It includes Peter Weller, Ellen Barkin, John Lithgow, Christopher Lloyd, and Jeff Goldblum, who is in our number 4 slot as well for Life Aquatic. The basic premise is almost impossible to describe. The idea is that Peter Weller's character, Buckaroo Banzai, is the ultimate Renaissance man. He's a neurosurgeon, a physicist, a samurai, greatest martial artist of all time. He's the lead singer and guitarist in his rock band, and he's followed everywhere by his team, the Hong Kong Cavaliers, who are all respectively equally incredible, but nobody quite as awesome as Buckaroo Banzai, and they go around the world fighting bad guys. In this movie, John Lithgow, who's an alien from the 8th dimension. It's a really quirky, oddball movie, but if you're into that, nothing's funnier. I'm a firm believer that almost every comedy could be made funnier with a choreographed dance scene. Case in point, Kung Fu Hustle and the original Austin Powers. And it's one of my favorite endings to any movie ever. As they were doing this end dance sequence, they actually hooked up a boombox to the back of one of the cameras and played Billy Joel's Uptown Girls because the tempo was exactly the same to the ending score. Alright, so here we are at our number 1 film of the week, and some of our viewers, namely Hannah and maybe my uncle, will be upset that I moved this movie from number 3 to number 1. It is the 1942 film Casablanca. Now I had to do it because Casablanca is my favorite movie of all time. I don't know if I've said it so far on any of these other shows, but I love Casablanca. You could probably put the movie on mute and I could recite every line from start to finish. The screenplay for this movie is one of the best screenplays of all time. Every line is important, every scene is necessary, other than maybe the Portuguese guitar player. But other than that, the movie is seamless when it comes to the screenplay. Interestingly enough, Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman almost quit this movie because the writers kept rewriting the end. The problem was censors wouldn't let Ingrid Bergman's character Ilsa go off with Rick because she was a married woman. The problem then, though, was how do we convince the audience that she would stay with Victor Laszlo? Obviously, the result was the famous ending where Rick convinces Ilsa to get on the plane with Victor. Our very last scene in this movie, after Victor and Ilsa have flown off to Lisbon and Major Strasser is dead, leaves us with Rick and Captain Renault on the tarmac, and they're discussing their future and what they're going to do now. So what they decide to do is go off to Marseille and join the resistance there. Now, why this is such a significant ending is because our 2 most self-serving characters are metaphors for Americans and the occupied French. Rick is an expatriated American who sticks his neck out for nobody, and the occupied French officer, Captain Renault, admits that he has no scruples. So here at the end, they've returned to being good people, and in a way, it's the screenwriter's way and the director's way of saying, okay, Americans, we need to remember our love for Europe, i.e. Ilsa, and we need to remember that she signifies all that we know and love and would do anything for, and we need to go protect that from the Nazis. Throughout the whole movie, it's clear that Rick and Captain Renault like and respect each other, but they're always at odds because of Renault's relationship with the Nazis and Rick's relationship with Ilsa and Victor Laszlo. So then at the end, when everything is kind of tied up and they've decided they're going to move on to Marseille, it leaves Rick the chance to say what AFI ranks as the 20th best quote of all time: "Louis, I believe this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." AFI also ranks this movie as the #2 best movie of all time. I wanted to give our first honorable mention this week to 1995's Robert Rodriguez directed Desperado. It's the film that actually first got me thinking about this list. It's got disqualified because technically in the end he's driven off by Selma Hayek, but it's just a really cool kind of shot and scene. Not much happens other than him just walking off, but it's Antonio Banderas and he does it in a really cool kind of way. So guys, that was this week's show. We had at number 5, The Searchers. At number 4, The Life Aquatic. At number 3, we had On the Waterfront. At number 2 went to Buckaroo Banzai, and at number 1 was Casablanca. Special thanks this week to Hannah, my little sister. I mentioned her a few times in this show. She's done a great job with critiques, and so has the rest of my family. I really appreciate it, guys. Secondly, to Al. He's a lab tech here at the Academy, and he's done a really nice job helping me editing all my films. And lastly, to Tyrone Rubin, who you guys can find at thefilmlovershow.com. He's been great in helping me get the videos set up. So thank you to all of you guys. So guys, if you liked the movies you saw today, please leave a comment telling me so. Maybe give me your top 5 best walk-off films of all time. You can always go to my blog and see the full clips of these movies. Especially this week, it'll be a good week for it because there's some great walk-offs that you probably want to see in full size. Hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you again next time.